Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martinson here with you on July 4th, 2023, with my State of the Union. Let's go there right now and talk about the actual State of the Union in the United States. And it's a little bit desperate at this point in time. Let me show you what I mean. First, Independence Day. That's what July 4th is. It's when the Second Continental Congress met in 1776, unanimously adopting the Declaration of Independence, announcing the colony's separation from Great Britain, and the Constitution itself provides, that legal and governmental framework for the United States. Inarguably, it is the genius thing that has separated the United States from many other countries in terms of its vitality, its ability to support a middle class, its prosperity. And it's under assault and attack. Now, for me, July 4th, up until this year, it's kind of been about this. Fireworks. I blew a lot of things up when I was a kid. Loved it. Still kind of do. Drinking beer, things like that. That's what July 4th has been. It's been a holiday. But now I think it's time to, let's take it for what it is. It's a time of remembrance, and it's a time of remembering that many people sacrificed everything in order to bring the freedom that I enjoy and that many other people enjoy to this day. And this is now under attack. The Constitution itself is surprisingly simple to understand. And that, I think, is both its strength and its problem for the ruling elites. They like things, thousands of words deep with a lot of wheretofores, hereas, notwithstandings, and all that other stuff. And this is actually written in language that pretty much anybody can understand. Its intent is clear. Remember, if you can't say what you mean to say to somebody clearly and quickly, then you don't really know what you're talking about. And I would submit that many of our lawmakers today, they don't know what they're talking about. So, carrying on, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Shall make no law. Appropriations is a form of lawmaking. Congress shall therefore also not fund any of these activities. So no law, and shall not abridge in any way, shape, or form freedom of speech. Has it done so? Well, obviously and clearly. This is a report that just came out from the Judiciary Committee in the United States, House. Says this is from June 26, 2023, talking about the activities of CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Listen, they were supposed to just protect us from hacking, mission creep, and ideology, plus a little dollop of deep state on top of all of that, plus a complete forgetting of why, how, and where America came to its prominence in the world and where prosperity comes from. They decided, you know what? We're an agency. Let's just trample on this thing called freedom of speech because, why not? What's anybody really gonna do? So, what do they say here? They say CISA, in yellow, in quotes, expanded its mission to surveil and censor American speech on social media. The report entitled The Weaponization of CISA, How a Cybersecurity Agency Colluded with Big Tech and Disinformation Partners to Censor Americans, that's a mouthful, but it's true, outlines collusion between CISA, Big Tech, and government government-funded all this public-private partnerships to by proxy and cover up CISA's unconstitutional activities. So these third parties, so they. What did CISA do? They actually went forward and just were scraping all this data from all the social media companies, the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and Twitters and all of that, and then we're assembling that and then sending out files of people, specific people, like Matt Taibbi and Alex Berenson and Dr. Malone and, of course, all of the COVID doctors and probably even myself. I mean, not to be special, literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people got censored. And not because of anything that they did that was actually wrong. This idea of misinformation, malinformation, disinformation, it's kind of like the Supreme Court talked about porn. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. You know it when you see it. But misinformation, malinformation, all of that, there's no such thing. there's only information that isn't correct that gets corrected by truthful information. The cure for bad information is better information. There's no such thing as perfect information, but that's the conceit that's hidden in that mis, and disinformation cycle, that trio. It's as if there's true stuff and then untrue stuff, black and white, and we, the government, know which is which. And of course, they don't. Obviously, the government would be the last place I would turn to get cutting edge, correct information about anything, especially related to things that would maybe embarrass or otherwise limit the reach of said government and officials and its bureaucratic proxies, toadies, and third-party affiliates. So this is actually a really big deal. The House Judiciary Committee says, wow, look what they did. And hold on. I didn't put it in here, but it turns out that CISA, when they got caught doing this, the first thing they did was they lamented, oh my God, what if people find out what we're doing? Another thing they did is they started scrubbing their website to try and pull down all of this stuff that they had been openly, brazenly, and I would submit to you, proudly doing prior to getting caught doing this. This is a clear, massive violation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment, not the 27th, the first. So this is a really big deal. And the fact that the media is downplaying this, the so-called mainstream media, tells you everything you need to know about the fact that if you have, you've got your Congress, you've got your executive branch, you've got the Supreme Court, and then there's that fourth estate, right? The media has not been doing its job. The fourth estate has absolutely fallen down on all of this because they've also been caught up in this sort of late stage empire fiction that there's a right answer, wrong answer, and that somehow maybe it was a mistake allowing 90% of the media companies to be bought up by just 6 companies, that when you devolve that ownership structure, you discover there's very few people that actually own most of the media outlets. And so what appears to be a wall of consolidated thought that everybody agrees because it's coming to you through all the major newscasters and all the major newspapers is actually a fiction. Because it's really the editorial stances of just a few people at the top. You know what their interests are? Not you, not me, not democracy. Their interests are they themselves and their own. That's it. And so everything they do has to be seen through the filter of, can it help enforce a consolidation of power? And that's the one thing that the framers of the Constitution were most attempting to avoid, because they've seen this act before. They were students of history. Humans are humans. This is how humans operate. The Constitution was an act of genius by very smart individuals who said, you show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. People are people. You give me absolute power, I'll show you absolute corruption. You give me people who who think they are above the law, I will show you lawless actions. That's what happened here. This is completely, obviously, easily against the law. Not just any law, not a law that somebody passed last year, but the first law, as it were, the First Amendment of the Constitution. This should never have happened. It did. Who's in jail because of this? Nobody. That's right. That's why the State of the Union is in an extreme state of disrepair here today. Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Notice it does not say muskets. Notice it does not say something slightly less powerful than what the government itself reserves to itself to have. It doesn't say any of that. In fact, other amendments, the Constitution itself, even prior to the amendment, says that any particular law not specifically or power specifically granted to the federal government or to states is reserved for the rights of the people. This is one of them. Nowhere in the Constitution earlier on preceding this does it say the government reserves for itself the right to have a commanding power over the people in terms of the arms that they shall hold. And yet, there is probably no more heavily lawified area than weapons and weapons owning in the United States, which is one of the great things, the bulwarks against that contrast the United States with any, and I would submit almost many, but if not any other country out there, is the fact that we still have a Second Amendment, and there are still extremely well-trained, well-equipped people out there in the citizenry, and that gives a little tiny bit of pause to other people out there who are thinking, maybe we should just write all kinds of crazy laws and usurp everything from the people. It's very clear. If it's not specifically enumerated in the Constitution as a power given to the federal government or to the states, it belongs with the people. That's never been challenged or overturned, but it's also not been honored. There have been lots of these so-called challenges where just crazy laws and things get passed and done. So this is an important amendment. How about the Fourth Amendment, right? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Did you have any trouble understanding that? It was very non-lawyer-ish, So that one's easy. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers. So to be secure in my person, I have the right to tell you what goes into my body and what does not go into my body. You cannot coerce me through the Fourth Amendment to put something in my body that I do not want to. The government cannot do that. Couldn't be easier. I'm secure in my personhood if and only if I get to control what happens to my personhood, right? Second, I'm secure in my houses and papers. So papers is the word that they used at the time to say your effects. Like anything you own, it's yours. Your body, your residence, your effects, your papers, the things you have that rightly are the creation of you. They belong to you. It shall not, against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. By the way, if they'd had these at the time, they would have written these in because that's what they meant to do, is say anything that you do, this is your private right, because they knew that the foundation of a healthy society is to have some privacy against that overreach, the oversight, the nudging they knew that could happen. If you knew that there was some bureaucratic magistrate always peering into your persons or effects, that they would, or house or effects, that they would then have the ability, that would be stifling. And that we would no longer have freedom. The most critical freedom you have is the freedom to define what you do with yourself in your house with your own stuff. You no longer own yourself. And I'll show you why. Because it turned out that it was all the way back in 2001 when the NSA began spying. This comes from the Electronic Freedom Foundation, and this is a great organization just looking at what's happening with us electronically. And so here they say in this article, the U.S. government, with assistance from major telecommunications carriers, including AT&T, has engaged in massive illegal dragnet surveillance of the domestic communications and communications records of millions of ordinary Americans since at least 2001. Hey, thanks for the Patriot Act. Democrats and Republicans, you both failed the people. I understand. You served the centralization, you served the power structure, you served the corporate interests, you served monetary aggregation. And we understand now how all of that allows you to come in as a congressperson on $174,000 a year and somehow magically, surprise, in a few years have a net worth of over $30 million. We get it. But in terms of actually serving the people and serving this thing called democracy, demos of the people, fail. Capital F, capital A, capital I, capital L, fail. So since this was first reported on by the press and discovered by the public in late 2005, EFF has been at the forefront of the effort to stop it and bring government surveillance programs back within the law and the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment. So it turns out in early 2006, EFF obtained whistleblower evidence, and they have a PDF and it's solid evidence, from a former AT&T technician, Mark Klein, showing that AT&T was cooperating with the illegal surveillance, and the undisputed documents show that AT&T installed a fiber optic splitter at its facility at 611 Folsom Street in San Francisco that makes copies of all emails, web browsing, and other internet traffic to and from AT&T customers and provides those copies to the NSA. The copying includes both domestic and international internet activities. This isn't a wiretap, it was observed. This is a country tap, end quote. Clear violation, Fourth Amendment. You are no longer secure in your home, in your personage. If I'm in my home doing what I want to do, the NSA says, well, we're really only allowed to technically the FISA warrant process only allows them to tap and look into foreign communications between American citizens and foreign nationals. However, that's just a rule. and they bent that rule and they said, we're going to spy on everybody for any reason. Of course, then the head of the NSA went ahead and lied about that to Congress. Nothing happened, because when you're in service of the power structures, the interests, the entrenched kleptocracy, corporatocracy, nothing happens when you lie, cheat, steal, or otherwise fail your citizens in your country. What happens is you fail upwards and you get promoted, very typically. So this has been going on, clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. So I'm pretty clear to say that our amendment is not being followed all that much. And by the way, it is arguably the crisp and seminal document that has allowed the prosperity we've enjoyed to exist. And that is now under attack, unfortunately. Here it is. I put the CISA stuff down and I put it down a little lower. Sorry, I had it out of order. I should have reordered my slides. So here it is. So this also comes from the House Judiciary Committee, same link as what I showed before. And it says here, CISA considered the creation of an anti-misinformation rapid response team capable of physically deploying across the United States. And it moved its censorship operation to a CISA-funded nonprofit. It's a nonprofit. After CISA and the Biden administration were sued in federal court, implicitly admitting that its censorship activities are unconstitutional. And of course they are, completely, 100%, no question about it, very easily understood. CISA wanted to use the same CISA-funded nonprofit as its mouthpiece to avoid the appearance of government propaganda. Here's the thing, though. You didn't avoid the odor, the stench of government propaganda. Very clear. Why the press is not screaming about this tells me that the press no longer does its job, doesn't even actually understand its job, and worse, doesn't understand that propaganda with its stench is something people don't pay for. Mark my words, propaganda ought to be free. Nobody wants to pay for that stuff, and I'm talking to you, New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, LA Times. Listen, you're all in on this. Newsweek, NPR, CNBC, CNN. You're obviously all in on this idea of trying to sell people propaganda, and they're not buying anymore, because you know what? It stinks. So at any rate, the appearance, if not the reality, of government propaganda was not successfully avoided. And carrying on, members of CISA's advisory committee agonized. It was only a matter of time before someone realizes we exist and starts asking about our work. Oh, as if you knew you were doing something wrong. That's like the burglar in the jewelry store getting fidgety because a little too much time has passed, and they're like, somebody might notice. We should get out of here while we can. Obviously guilty. They know it. You know it. I know it. Just the press and the deep state and a lot of people on the Democratic side currently don't seem to understand that. No, some Republicans too seem to be a little asleep at the switch. So in response to mounting public scrutiny, CISA scrubbed its website of references to its domestic surveillance and censorship activities. Isn't that nice? First Amendment violations, very bad, very egregious, very obvious. So if you care about your future, if you care about prosperity, if you care about leaving behind a better world for your children, your grandchildren, or whoever's coming after you, if you care at all about any of these things, these matters matter, and we should all be doing everything we can to uphold the sacrifices that were already made on our behalf in order to create the abundant, amazing, wonderful world in which we find ourselves, which is slowly falling apart. And either we sit back and watch that, grab some popcorn, hope for the best, or maybe we get involved and try and do something about that.